Hello, how are we all doing? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, my name is Steph. If you've been here before, then you'll know I've been speaking about sobriety for quite some time. It's a topic I'm passionate about because when I was looking to go sober or cut down my alcohol intake, there was no one really my age speaking about it from a place of just wanting to abstain rather than having an alcohol reliance. So if you haven't seen any of my previous videos before, I do delve in a little bit more into my story and my journey and how I got here. I decided to go sober in 2019 and have not looked back since. So I have been sober for coming up, 6 years, which has just flown by. Along the way, I have learned so many things about myself, about alcohol, about how I was using it as a crutch before, and I feel like I've gained so much from this sobriety journey, and I'm just passionate about sharing that. And I feel like if you have been drawn to click on this video, you're probably a little bit sober curious, wondering what life would look like if you reduced or cut out alcohol, maybe thinking about it but haven't been brave enough to try, or maybe you have tried and you feel like you've failed cutting it out. Whatever it might be, I'm hoping that this video can offer you a bit of perspective on both sides to help you to decide if this journey is the right choice for you. So this video is slightly different to ones that I filmed before, and today I just wanted to discuss the pros and cons. I think when you're embarking on a journey to sobriety, you need to have such a core why behind why you're doing it. And I think to have all of the information, pros and cons, good and bad, can help you to make an informed decision, an informed choice for your journey moving forwards. Like I said, there's other videos that delve into my story a lot more, but I originally started with just going for a month without alcohol to see how I felt. And I just felt all of these benefits that were so wonderful and aligning with the ethos that I have and the person that I wanted to be, that I found it so easy to continue going because every choice I made was just feeding my why more and more and more. I wanted to be the healthiest, happiest version of myself ultimately, and cutting out alcohol helped me to do that. So what I did was, on my social media, because I've spoken on Instagram for many years about this, I'm sure people are bored of me talking about it, I asked my audience, who are also sober and sober curious, most of them are anyway, what pros and cons have you felt? So I didn't want it to just be my anecdotes and my experience. I've collated a list of 10 pros and 10 cons that I keep looking over here, by the way, because I've got notes here, that came up the most throughout that question box. And I'm hoping to share an insight into some of the good and some of the bad things about going sober, and then you can make a choice as to whether or not it's right for you. So we're going to start with the pros. The most obvious one is the no hangovers. That came up time and time again. I know some people suffer with hangovers more than others, but I really struggled with that anxiety, and that was the one alarm bell that was so consistent with me not wanting to drink. The waking up with the heightened heart rate, the worry about what I said and did, nervousness and anxiousness that could sometimes last for 3 or 4 days. When you don't drink, you don't get that feeling. Of course, it doesn't alleviate all anxiety, but I believe it's so much easier to identify the problem when there's no substance involved. And alcohol actually stops your short-term memory from transferring into your long-term memory. So that's why you sometimes get blanks from a night out, because the transfer hasn't happened. I don't understand the science behind it. There's so much more that I need to learn, but that is kind of why you sometimes have these blackouts that can cause anxiety, like, oh God, I don't remember how I got home, or did I say something that offended someone? And I think not having that anxiety for me was a massive, massive bonus, as well as not having the physical side effects, whether you're sick, whether you've got a headache, whether it just throws out your entire week, your weekend, whatever it might be. The amount of plans that I cancelled because of a hangover, or the amount of plans that I showed up to and I wasn't myself or the person I wanted to be because of a hangover. I think that is just an obvious pro. That's why it's number one. The next thing I would say is improved sleep. So I used to think that a glass of wine before bed would help me to nod off and wind me down for the evening, but it absolutely wasn't the case. When I completely removed alcohol from my life, that is when this sleep, I cannot even explain. I went into a deeper sleep, I slept for longer, I found it easier to fall asleep, and I feel like there's just this level of consistency within my sleep ever since I've cut out alcohol. And I don't know if it's maybe because the choices that I'm making with not drinking also align with the sleep hygiene that I want to promote. So for example, I don't have as many late nights as I would if I was drinking, because you know what it's like, you say you're going out for one, that turns into another round, and just staying past that point of wanting to come home, whereas I can still go out with my friends and enjoy my time with them, but I just have this awareness of, I've had a great time, but I'm ready to go home now. So my nights aren't as erratic. Sleep just feels deeper, more restorative, and I think that just breeds into feeling a better sense of wellness throughout all of my life. life, I feel like sleep is the foundation of everything. When I'm well rested, I make better choices. I get up and see the daylight, all of the things that bleed into making us feel a little bit better within ourselves. Better physical health was the next one that came up so much. Things like improved fitness, clearer skin. There's something called sober hair in the sober community where your hair just feels thicker and fuller. Same with your nails. And I do wonder what link, there's probably science behind it that I absolutely do not know. I do wonder what link there is between alcohol and gut health, because surely that's killing a lot of the gut microbiome that is responsible for some of these improved physical attributes. Again, bleeding into consistency. I think because I'm not spending so much time hungover, I'm more likely to train, to commit to my training, to commit to my routines and the strategies that I know make me feel better, which would then lead to a better improved physical fitness because I'm being more consistent with it and practicing what I preach. Again, with the clear skin, I could not believe it. I'd always just get blemishes and spots, and don't get me wrong, I still on occasion do, but the consistency of my skin, and again, I wonder if it is anything to do with the consistency of my routines or the gut microbiome not being completely destroyed by Jaeger bombs and beer. That was something that came up a lot within the question box, people saying that they physically felt better. Something that I personally felt was a better digestion. Again, that could be down to the foods that I was choosing. So obviously after a night out, you get hungry, you make poor food choices. On the night you're out, maybe you get a kebab and some chips, and then the morning after when you're hungover and you can't be asked to cook, you maybe order in or you cook a fry up or something to make you feel something the next day that isn't hell, horror and hangover. My digestion was just shot for it, and I'd find myself bloating a lot, having really difficult issues with my tummy, and that all seemed to subside a lot when I removed alcohol. Another one that came up so much was financial savings. Now I know for a fact that I have saved so much money from not drinking alcohol, not only because the expense of alcoholic drinks are going up and up and up, and there's been a lot of research to show that that's one of the main reasons why the younger generation are drinking less, because it's no longer as affordable as it was. And in the UK it's quite expensive, especially in London. But also everything that goes either side of the drinking occasion, whether it's getting a taxi home, the food you eat at 2 o'clock in the morning, the deliveries you order the next day, you're just no longer spending such an abundance of cash on expensive nights out or overpriced drinks, and you're making better choices with your money. And I feel like I, myself and my friends that have reduced their alcohol feel the same. And sometimes I still go out with friends for dinner and they'll order a bottle of wine and split it between them, and when we work out the bill they always take the alcohol off and then we just split the food or whatever. My bill is always substantially less because I'm not paying for the alcohol, so you can see a greater financial saving too. Increased productivity. I just feel like I have more focus and more consistent energy to focus throughout my week. The way that I've explained it before is I feel like I've unlocked this superpower. Have you seen the film Limitless? Anyone seen that? You know when he takes that pill, which is such a bad analogy given that we're not taking substances, but he takes this pill and suddenly everything goes into hyper focus and he feels like he's got more hours in the day. That's what sobriety feels like to me. The theme of this video is just underlying consistency throughout everything that I do, and I know that's how a lot of other people have felt during this journey as well. This coincides with what I was saying about anxiety, but better mental health. Again, feeling more consistent in my mental health, less dips in my mental health, more positive days, more enjoyable days, less anxiety, improved mood, and I'd just say an overall stability within my mental health. I'm still a very emotional person, but that's me to my core. All of the other issues that were exacerbated by alcohol have just disappeared, and I feel very grateful for that. Clearer social connections. Now, I would say that I lost a lot of friends when I first stopped drinking. Now this is one of the cons that you will hear about shortly, and that wasn't a bad thing because I realised I actually had nothing in common with these people, and we would just kind of put together because we would drink together and have fun and we were compatible drinking partners. When actually now I value my social connections so much more because they're on a deeper level. We go out and I actually remember the conversations that we've had, and rather than it being empty, shallow conversation, I feel like everything is on a deeper level. Every encounter I have with someone, it just feels a lot more genuine, and I've been able to work out who are kind of my good time friends and who are kind of my ride or die friends. Who would I call on an emergency? And I realised very quickly that the ones that I would call to drink with weren't necessarily the ones that I would call in my time of need. And I think without alcohol as a crutch, you can truly understand who your true friends are. Enhanced memory. So you also remember all of your conversations, you remember all of your nights out, not every single moment, but you have more of an awareness of those memories that you want to cherish and remember. And I realised very quickly, especially after lockdown, that when I was meeting up with my friends, it wasn't necessarily just to get drunk, it was to see how they were doing, to find out about their lives, to catch up and share stories and giggle and laugh and still do all the things that we were kind of doing when we were drinking, but the actual core social connection was lost when we were just knocking back shots and beers. I keep saying beers, but I don't drink beer, but you know what I mean. And I think now I just value my time with those I love so much more that I want to cherish those memories, and not drinking has definitely helped with doing that. Another thing for me was awareness and control. So if ever I was drinking, I would lose my inhibitions completely. And I think alcohol affects the decision-making part of your brain. So I would make some very poor decisions, not put myself in dangerous situations, but I wouldn't be aware of danger. I don't want to be afraid of the world, but I do want to be conscious of my surroundings and knowing that myself and my friends are protected. And I think I would just sometimes put myself, especially when I was younger, in slightly challenging situations. Like, there wouldn't have been choices that I would have made if I was sober, and now I feel like I have more control and more awareness of everything that's going on around me, which I'm very, very grateful for. Then lastly, I feel like this journey has helped me to discover genuine enjoyment. So working out what I actually enjoy doing, whether it's the people I'm with, the activities we're doing, the social settings we're in, the restaurants we're in, the bars we're in, the music we're listening to, actually understanding what I liked. I don't need alcohol to escape anymore. Whereas now, because I know what makes me happy and I know what makes me feel good and I know where I feel my best, I prioritise that, and I prioritise the people that make me feel my best. And this has all come from a journey to sobriety that has been challenging at times. Like, don't get me wrong, there are still points where I feel a little bit out of the loop when everyone's getting a bit tipsy, or sometimes if all of my friends are drinking, I can feel a little bit left out sometimes, but never enough to reach for a drink and sacrifice all of these benefits that I felt over the last 6 years. So I think that kind of moves us slowly into the cons, which, funnily enough, the first one on my list is feeling alienated. I think if you have grown up with a group of friends that you love and you're still really good friends with them even though you're deciding not to drink, especially in that transitional phase where you first vocalise how you're feeling about alcohol and maybe making it known to people around you that you're not drinking, you can feel alienated. And it's never nice being the odd one out or being the one to go against the grain of everything you've always done, especially if people know you as being a drinker. I think people knew me as being this kind of like free spirit, drinking, going out, dancing, having a good time. So when I was like, I'm not doing that anymore, I felt almost a pressure to perform that way, because that's how people knew me, because I didn't want to feel alienated or ostracised. And because many social events revolve around drinking, you can feel excluded. And I think that's just something good to know before embarking on this journey. It's not forever, and your friends learn to understand you and your choices, but in the early stages it's definitely difficult. Peer pressure is another one. So people love to project their thoughts and feelings onto you, even though this could be something that is great for you, your mental health, your physical health, whatever your why is, this could be so great for you. But if people don't feel aligned with it, sometimes it can feel like you're challenging their beliefs and they don't like it. So it can come with peer pressure, unsolicited opinions, criticisms. You just have to go into this situation knowing that, so that you can prepare to have a little coat of armour or a thicker skin for when those conversations happen. And I always say, try if you can, if you know there's someone that's going to make your life a little bit hellish, if it's a friend that's a bit of a ringleader, try and take them out before you get to the social situation. So messaging them before in a calm way, just be like, oh, by the way, just to let you know, Friday I'm not drinking, or I'm actually not drinking for a month, seeing how it goes, hope you understand, blah, 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 blah. Just so that in the moment, it's not as easy for them to be like, oh, don't be boring, da, da, da. There's always going to be people that are like that, but as long as you're prepared for it and you're ready to take the blow, I think it makes life a little bit easier knowing what to expect. Also, you can miss the taste and culture of drinking. So for me, I used to love the taste of red wine, and on a Sunday afternoon, my boyfriend and I would go to a pub and we'd sit in front of the fire and we'd share a bottle of wine, and that became one of our traditions. Or say, for example, you know, when you go to a new country and you're embracing the culture of the locals, and sometimes after a meal they'll come out with a little tipple for you to enjoy, and as a gesture of thanks for eating at their restaurant. I sometimes feel like, one, I'm missing out on that experience, but also being a bit offensive to be like, oh no, thank you. Like, they've given me this amazing gesture and I'm being like, no, I don't want it. So sometimes that can be tricky to navigate, but again, the taste of alcohol doesn't outweigh the benefits that I'm feeling. So I do relate to that feeling of, oh, I'm missing out on an experience. Or say, for example, my friends have organised a wine tasting for their birthday. Alcohol-free wines aren't there yet where they can kind of match like for like with all of the complexities and enjoyment of that, or wine pairings with food. It's not something I ever did that often, but I know many people miss the experience, the taste. Like, some people love the taste of beer. Luckily, there's lots of alcohol-free options that can kind of satisfy that need, you can feel like you're missing out in that sense sometimes. The fatigue of listening to drunk people. Now this can definitely be a con because people aren't remembering the conversations that they've had, and they've maybe had a few too many. They are suddenly either offloading their life stories onto you, telling you how much they love you, or just finding it a safe space to vent. And I don't know if I've got one of those faces where people just feel comfortable to tell me their deepest, darkest thoughts. But I do seem to attract people, especially drunk people, that want to tell me all about themselves. And even friends, for example, that have told me the same story 8 times in one evening. It can be a bit exhausting. I'm not gonna lie. And also sometimes people who are drinking that know you're not can get this sudden awareness that they're very, very drunk and start apologising profusely for being so drunk. I mean, oh God, you don't drink, I'm so drunk, da 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 da. And like I said, it can get a little bit tiresome. But as long as you know that, then you can hopefully be a little bit more prepared for it. Fewer drink options is definitely something when you're out and about. If you're going to someone's house, there are so many on the market that you can purchase and take with you and enjoy. I'll link some below. But when you're out and about, bars, restaurants, pubs haven't necessarily caught up yet. There can be a few options, but I find a lot of them to be really synthetic or botanical and not what I would choose to enjoy. And you don't always want to just drink soft drinks or fizzy drinks because you end up leaving with like furry teeth where there's sugar just infested on your enamel. So that can be tricky. I'd always say work out what you like to drink as a non-drinker. And sometimes I even say to the bartender like, oh, can you give me a soda water with like loads of fruit in it, make it look like a gin in a gin glass, or give me a nice elderflower tonic with a wedge of lime but make it look like it's a gin, so that you still feel included with your friends. But it can be tricky if you're out and there's literally all there is Diet Coke or an orange juice. But you just need to kind of remember why you're there. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm not out because I'm drinking, I'm out because I'm catching up with my friends and I'm excited about it. Many people also said, and this is something I definitely felt in the early stages, was missing that feeling of a confidence boost. You know, when you get that Dutch courage, that liquid courage, and you've had a drink and suddenly you feel like the best version of yourself in those early tipsy phases. That is something that you obviously don't get as a sober person, and you really have to learn who you are, who you want to be, and how you want to show up in social environments. And I used to give myself a bit of a pep talk before going to be like, this is how I'm going to show up tonight. At the end of the day, your friends love you for you, right? They don't love you because you can drink 7 rum and cokes. They love you because of the person you are, the heart you have, what you bring to the table. And that may be in a social environment with lots of alcohol, and that may be the way you've presented yourselves to them. But you can constantly reinvent yourself and make new friends and also introduce your old friends to a new version of you. And I think that's exciting, but it can be quite daunting. So one thing that I would say is great from sobriety is the personal growth that I have gone on, and almost the self-improvement to get to a point where I feel confident enough to show up as I am. I know that I am enough as I am. That's something that has taken probably about 6 years to understand and know within myself, but it is a journey and you just need to be prepared for that. Assumptions and judgment. I know we touched on this in Under Peer Pressure. There are a lot of people that will assume that maybe you're a recovering alcoholic. There may be people thinking that you're an ex-addict. There may be people assuming that you're pregnant, which can be really triggering for many, many people, especially if you're trying to conceive, or especially if you're completely adamant that you don't want to conceive. You just have to remember in these environments that these are all projections from people's learned behaviours and what they've seen in society. So you kind of have to go into it with some grace, and I felt comfortable enough to be honest about my decisions. So because I was doing it for my mental and physical health, I was just very open and honest. And I would read the room. Like some people, usually older generations, if they're like, oh, why aren't you drinking? I wouldn't be like, oh, I get a little bit anxious, because they would just have no time for that. Some people would then be open to a conversation and it would start beautiful conversation. So as much as the judgments and the assumptions can be hard, again, you have to go in with that little cloak of protection just to prepare you for these maybe slightly more difficult conversations, especially as the night goes on and people have the liquid courage to ask them. Fear of losing friends is something I also touched on. It wasn't just a fear for me, it actually did happen. Not in the sense of I lost any close friends. A lot of my friends that I grew up with and had a really beautiful connection with, sober or drinking, have stayed the same, and my circle has not changed. There were just a few friends that I'd made that were club promoters or always out or dancers in clubs, or people that just loved going to the bar and pub and whatever it might be. We just drifted. We had some amazing memories, but I don't necessarily miss them from my life because they weren't people that I would call in a crisis or call to catch up with anyway. But I do understand that if you have grown up in an environment with maybe your core friends are all big drinkers and you are the only one going against the grain, it can be really hard to kind of feel that fear of maybe you will drift away from them, or maybe they'll stop inviting you out. You have to take everything on a case-by-case basis, right? Like, will you be really upset if you're missing out on those occasions? If so, show up in a different way and still be the friend you want to be, but without alcohol. But also sometimes these things just gently dissipate for a reason anyway. Everyone is constantly growing and evolving, and we're not all growing at the same speed. or in the same direction, and that will happen throughout your life. I just genuinely believe that everyone in your life is either a love or a lesson, and you just have to go into that situation knowing that there may be a fear of losing people. Something that came up in the question box is you can't numb your emotions. So I know a lot of people drink to just escape from their daily lives, and I get it, but you can find that in other ways. I mean, I'm such an advocate for talking therapies, movement therapies, meditation, breathwork, daylight. I know that sounds really hippie, but there are so many ways that you can process the things you're trying to numb, I guess. And I know that's so easy for me to sit here and say that because I don't know everyone's situations, but if you can try and understand or even bring awareness to why you're drinking to feel numb in the first place, which I feel like if you're watching this video, you probably are. Like if you're constantly drinking to feel numb and you're feeling like you're stuck in that rut, like try and navigate why you're feeling numb in the first place. Try and process that in other ways, and then you won't need the alcohol as a crutch anyway. I'm not trying to give you life advice, I'm no life coach, but I've now found different methods to process what I'm feeling that isn't just getting drunk and legless and escaping from it, because it doesn't go anywhere. You just pause it and you delay it a couple of days, and then it might come back in the anxiety with a vengeance. So I'd much rather process my emotions and what I'm feeling rather than just try to escape or suppress them. And then lastly, the other con that you may find is that everyone will expect you to be the designated driver. And because, like I mentioned, one of the pros, because you have this awareness and control, you may feel responsible for some of the people that are a little bit more drunk around you, for getting them home and all of these different things, which can feel like a burden sometimes. So I hope this has been helpful. I know I rambled for the last 20-25 minutes, but I hope it has been valuable to look at both sides of sobriety. I definitely see more of the benefits, hence why I've been able to do it for such a long time. Whereas I know many people may only see the cons, but I think it's great to just journal it down and just write a list for yourself of what is in your life that you would miss and what is in your life that you would gain, and then just really looking at that, identifying your why, and then embracing this journey with open arms. But if you do have any other questions, I'm no expert, but I do have lots of friends that are sober, lots of people that are advocates and motivational speakers in this space, and I would be more than happy to ask them for advice if I don't have any of the answers. Or if you want to share anything in the comments about how you're feeling about your journey, please do, because I'd love for it to be a little hub of positivity for anyone wanting to embark on this journey. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, sending you loads of love and good luck. Bye.